I picked up these books and started reading. Of course, I read the Quran, and I just kept waiting for like some kind of evil verse to validate my point of view of like this oppressive religion and whatnot. And every single time I looked for one, I just found one that told me the exact opposite, and things that actually aligned with the Bible, to the point where, like, when I was reading the Bible, I was like, why was no one practicing this? But you're taught, oh, that was that time period. Now in the New Testament, if you're a Christian, you know that this is in the New Testament, so don't try to tell me it's the Old Testament. In 1 Corinthians 11, there's a verse about veiling, and it's actually kind of aggressive. Like, the tone is very aggressive, and it's very, you do this for man because you're the glory of man as a woman. And I always thought that was a little odd, but I didn't really question it, because Christianity, you're taught not to question God. And Islam, it's the opposite, because we know that all the answers are in the Quran, so why wouldn't you question God? Why wouldn't you go to him and ask your questions freely and search for answers? And Islam encourages searching for the truth, because why would you fear a religion? Why would you fear picking up the Quran and reading it if you know you're correct, And a lot of Christians fear the book as if it's like, you touch it, it's like black magic or something, it's stuck for love. But, so I 1 Corinthians, there's that verse, but then the Quran has the verse about hijab, obviously, and it's very gentle, and it starts off not even addressing the women, it starts off addressing the men to lower their gaze, and I always thought that was very beautiful. And alhamdulillah, my mind got blown every day. The fact that there's 7 heavens, that's not a thing in Christianity. Like, what? There's 7 levels to heaven? Like, all these things, I was taking notes. I was waking up at 6 a.m. praying and watching Islamic videos, and I was so excited. I was watching tutorials on how to pray, and following them, like, side by side, writing down the transliteration of the Arabic on index cards, putting it in front of me and praying with it. And I was doing this all in secret, mind you. Eventually my parents found out. My dad was like my best friend, so when he found out, he just came upstairs, and it wasn't really a big deal for me to have, 50 books on my bed, but it was a big deal for it to be the Quran. So he was like, he was a little skeptical, but he was like, he was supportive, kind of. He didn't really think anything of it. He just, he was like, you're not going to wear that hoorah thing in your head, right? I do wear that hoorah thing on my head, but anyways. He, I just was, like, excitedly telling him, Dad, like, like, this is not what everyone says it is. This makes sense. Like, there's logic in this book. Islam teaches logic that aligns with God, like, because in Christianity you're taught that God is above logic, and I understand that from a point of view. Like, our version of logic is much different than the creator, the person who knows everything about everything. But I knew that an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent God, like, that couldn't be 3. That had to be 1. And I'd always, my whole life, thought of God as 1. So this was not a surprise to me, but, like, when you're Christian, you don't think that there's another route, because it's taught in Christianity that if you believe in anything else, you're going to go to hell. Which is what makes it so surprising that people think Islam is such a vindictive and, scary, oppressive religion, is that Islam was the reason women were given rights. And Islam does not diminish the Bible in any way, shape, or form. It just says, the Bible was corrupted by man, and so we have brought this Quran as a seal of the religions. That the Torah had truth in it, and the Bible had truth in it, but man corrupted it. And if you look at the earliest English version of the Bible, it's the King James Version, fit for King James. Catholics were the first Christians, and we all know back in the day they were taking the Bible and saying that the commoner could not read it because they were the only ones good enough to read it. So don't you find that a little bit odd? Like, that's not a little bit odd to you? So I got to a point where I was crying to God. I was on my knees, and because I think I'm gonna go to hell, right? I'm like, God, like, please tell me, like, what to do. What am I supposed to do? And I felt this ease in my heart. And I was like, why would God punish me for praying 5 times a day? Why would God punish me for believing in one God? Why would God punish me for being someone who donates to charity? For being someone who fasts to control their desires? Who wears the hijab, which was originally revealed in the Bible to be worn, but people just don't wear it. Like, why? And I felt this comfort, and I knew that, this is what I had to do. And so I converted with my laptop open, and I looked up the Shahada, and I said it in my childhood bedroom. And soon after that, my best friend passed away, Anya. And I knew that, I knew death was not going to wait for me to convert. And so it was an extremely difficult time for me. My mom was hiding my Quran. I was hiding practicing Islam. I was following prayers on YouTube. But alhamdulillah, everything you do as a revert is rewarded. And He's carried me so far. He's given me everything I've asked for. Every Taraweeh prayer I've prayed has been answered. Even maybe the ones that shouldn't have been answered, but every Taraweeh prayer has been answered. Every Tahajjud prayer has been answered. And I find so much pride in being a Muslim. And let's talk about the individual reasons that I converted to Islam. I already said that I read the verse in 1 Corinthians about wearing the scarf, and there are some Christians who practice it, but I just thought it was weird that most Christians don't practice it, and that the verse was so aggressive in the Bible versus the gentleness of the Quran. Besides that, the 7 heavens thing really blew my mind, the fact that Islam tells us that there's 7 heavens. Another thing, the Big Bang. In Christianity, especially in private school, you're taught, the Big Bang didn't happen. Islam, it says that the Big Bang happened. It says in the Quran the Big Bang happened, that God created the Big Bang. And that's how the universe was made. And so it was mind-blowing to see science and Islam align, which is not, again, isn't taught in Christianity. You're taught that God is above science, God is above logic, God is above all the things that the Quran talks about and says these are actual evidences that God exists. Another thing, the fact that Jesus prayed with his head bowed down on the ground, and that's how Muslims pray. That was, again, very mind-blowing for me. Another reason would be that the prophets in the Bible are the same prophets as the Quran. There's a couple in the Bible that are not in the Quran, and I think that there's one in the Quran that's not in the Bible. But I had no clue that, these are the same people that Islam talks about. Abraham and Joseph and Mary and who else? Lot. And some of these stories are different, right? Some of these stories are actually, these people are villainized in the Bible, and they are not villains in the Quran, which is interesting. And again, Quran says that this is the seal of the religions, that this is the truth, and that the Bible has been corrupted by man, that it had been revealed with the truth, but it got corrupted by man. Another reason, the Bible, mainly speaks to men, whereas the Quran speaks to the prophet and tells him, tell this to mankind. That was very different for me. And actually, I feel like the Bible is a lot more misogynistic. The Bible is misogynistic compared to the Quran. The Quran is not misogynistic. The gentleness of the hijab verse is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.